Levi. Let's hear about the beer for the evening.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Tonight we're doing the Discovery Bay Brewing Annabelle's Amber Ale, which was a style I felt needed to be represented in this just because of its very firm Northwest roots. We'll go ahead and talk about the brewery first. Discovery Bay Brewing. So for those of you that don't know, they're located in Port Townsend, Washington. They came on the scene in 2018. It's in the first roundabout as you're going into Port Townsend. You'll hang a left and go into the kind of industrial little zone, and it's a really cool spot with a nice outdoor beer garden and some good snacks there as well. And they make great beer. So some good friends of mine making great beer, doing a really good job. And this beer happens to be my favorite offering from them. And for those of you that weren't here last week, I'll go ahead and open this can. You pull the tab. Oh, I just got splashed a little bit. That's good. That means it's carbonated. But you pull this top all the way off so that the whole can is completely open. So yeah, go ahead and open yours and we'll get into the style. The American Amber Ale. So it's a phrase that was originated by startup American microbreweries in the 1980s, kind of as a simple beer description for consumers before it found a formal style name. The result of the name was a result of the kind of the American consumer sensibility. Tradition really called for pale ales to be of a deep gold to a full amber. But consumers were kind of taking it literally and expecting a pale beer to be kind of straw colored or blonde. So this beer was traditionally called a pale ale. They started calling it a pale ale in the mid 1980s. And it occupies the space in between an American pale ale and an American brown ale, but often overlapping in the adjacent categories in significant ways. So the proper American Amber requires the aroma of American hops, but malt bill is kind of the main player here. As you can taste, it's you'll usually get strong notes of caramel and toffee, faint amounts of roast character, but that's to be subdued, maybe a little bit of chocolate, but it's supposed to have a nice strong aroma of American hops with that big toffee kind of raisiny dark grain bill, malt forward bill with a pretty clean finish. Yeah, it's one of my favorite styles. Started by brewers in California and Northwest Ale and the Northwest region. Good examples would be Bell's Amber Ale, Anderson Valley Boont Amber, and Mendocino Red Tail Ale. And it's funny, one of the most popular amber ales in the store is Alaskan Amber, which is actually not really an amber ale. It's technically an alt beer, which is a German style that's similar in brewing technique and ingredients, but they actually lager it for a couple months before consumers get it, which what lagering means is basically it's just cold storage. So they find the alt beer to a perfectly clear beer, whereas an American Amber Ale can be a little bit hazy, a little bit unfiltered and unrefined. I hope you guys enjoy. Cheers.
You said before we started it was good for lawn mowing. What else would you pair this one with, Levi?
This would be good. It's a mild, it's not an overpowering beer, but like a roasted chicken would be really good with this. Something light.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any questions about the beer we can cover later, but for now, let's hear about Peggy's book. Take it away, Peggy.
Yeah, assuming I'm unmuted.
Yes, you're good to go.
Fine. I am intrigued that and delighted that the Amber that the Annabelle Amber is the beverage for tonight because it's toasted, it's roasted, it ferments at a fairly high temperature, and you'll see in a minute why that is so appropriate to this book. This is a first novel by a young woman named April Davila. It's just under 250 pages long, just for those of you who count those things. And I think, and I can't say this about a lot of books, it's just as long as it needs to be. Sometimes editors don't edit very well, but I think this book is just perfect that way. And yes, there are a lot of ostriches in this book. The story takes place in the Mojave Desert of California. If you've ever been there, you know it's warm, on a ranch outside of a very small town. The ostriches on this ranch are kept for their eggs, which are sold to gourmet stores and fancy restaurants. And I think I saw once on a cooking show that an ostrich egg equals about the same volume as a dozen chicken eggs. So several omelets out of one ostrich egg. Our protagonist is a young woman named Tallulah. When she was 14, she went to live on the ranch with her grandma, Helen, who has owned the ranch for decades and raised her 3 children there. We see how Tallulah came to live with her grandmother, and we see that 10 years later, at the age of 24, she is planning to leave for a forestry job in Montana. But Grandma Helen dies suddenly and comes to find out, kind of to everybody's surprise, that she has left the ranch to Tallulah. And since she plans to leave town, Tallulah negotiates to sell the ranch to a local man who also raises ostriches, but he raises them for their meat. I guess there's a lot of ostrich farms in the desert. Other key characters include Tallulah's mother, aunt, and uncle. It's a dysfunctional family. There are a lot of secrets. Keeping them takes a toll on everyone. In its own way, the desert is another character. I really enjoyed the way the author described the heat and the sun and how the nights are cool and what the moon looks like and how the sand just stretches on. I have not spent a lot of time in the desert, but I really felt it was a great use of words to express the place. This is not a mystery novel, but there is a mystery at its core. Why have the birds suddenly stopped laying eggs? There's a lot going on among the characters in this book, but the author did, I thought, an excellent job of making sure that we never forgot that the effects that the missing eggs have on the ranch and on Tallulah's stress level. She's running this egg ranch that is not producing eggs. Most of the primary characters in this book are strong women, and they're very well drawn. I thought the dialogue throughout was believable, which I don't always find when I read novels. I'm always looking for it, and very often there's a disconnect. Most of the men are also drawn very credibly. My one exception would be the fellow to whom she is planning to sell this ranch. He is a blowhard and he is one-dimensional. He was just one person who I thought could have been fleshed out a little bit more, although it in no way harms the story. Here are some thoughts that leapt out at me while I was reading this book. Aging doesn't, this is not a surprise to most of us, aging doesn't automatically make you a kinder person. Grandma Helen was not warm or nurturing as a mother, and she remained the same while raising her granddaughter. Things that happen to you and things that you do can have repercussions years later, generations later. I know that's not an especially original thought, but it certainly came through on this book. Another thing it also reinforced in me is that there is such a difference between running away from something and running towards something. So it just was a nice reminder of that. And how do I put this? Families sometimes come apart, and once they come apart, they can sometimes come back together. That's not to say everybody does, but there is some healing. Sometimes blood is thicker than water, and sometimes it isn't. So another thing that is a theme that is always close to my heart is that families aren't just those people who are related to you by blood. And sometimes, where you are and who you're with is exactly where you're supposed to be. Another thought on families, which any of you who came from a family can probably relate to, just because people are raised together and live together in the same house, that does not mean that they're going to turn out the same or even be able to relate to each other. They just doesn't always happen. But enough about people. We learned a lot about ostriches in this book. And my favorite tidbit is this one, and it demonstrates the wisdom and the beauty of evolution or intelligent design, or however you think that ostriches came to be, because they are, of course, as birds, descended from dinosaurs. Ostrich nests are basically depressions in the sand. They don't actually build a nest. They just, wiggle around until there's this depression. Females are light in color, and they sit on the nest during the day. The males are darker, and at night, they sit on the nests to keep the eggs warm. So whenever there's somebody on the nest, there's always somebody on the nest, and it's always camouflaged. So I just thought that was kind of cool, because there are times where, somebody looks out and you really don't see anything, but there are, over 100 birds out there that are doing what they should be doing. 3 additional ostrich factoids. One that you may not know, that a kick from an ostrich can kill a human. They're 8 feet tall, and they're very powerful. Their legs are very, very powerful. Number 2, ostriches are attracted to shiny objects. If you are wearing something shiny, they will peck at it. And so leave your jewelry home if you're going to an ostrich ranch. And this just blew me away. I actually had to look this one up to confirm it. Ostriches' brains are smaller than their eyes. Now, ostriches have, good size eyes, and they have very good distance vision, but their brains are about the size of a walnut. And you can draw from that whatever you'd like, but the bottom line is ostriches are not very smart. Bottom line is I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was very well written. It just gave me a feel for the place and the people and what life was like living outside of a little town in the desert. So if you like big birds or anything like that, I would highly recommend this book.
Thank you, Peggy. That was great. So again, that's 142 ostriches. I love the feathers on the cover. It's so pretty. Settled on, but I read an interview or like a newspaper article with the author, and she had said that she had thought of several different titles that were more like literary fiction-y, because she wanted it to be a real serious book. And she thought that the ostriches would make it less serious if she referenced that in kind of the publicity. And a friend said, even though the ostriches aren't the main part of the story, that's a hook. And so that's how it got that title. I listened to a sample of the audiobook, and it just, I think it does, the narrator is going to do a really good job of evoking the character of the desert. Even in just the little clip that was available for me to listen to, she's not in a hurry. The narration has that kind of languid feeling, like a hot day. So I think that's going to be real enjoyable for audiobook listeners. The narrator is Sarah Molo Christensen, and she has a lot of theater credits, including the Shakespeare Theater Company in DC and several other places. So definitely a trained narrator. So one of the things that I was thinking about, I don't think she talks about ostriches, but I read the bird book by Cy Montgomery. She did The Soul of the Octopus, that was our community read a year. There you go. And she has a bird book that I'll have to look up the exact title, but she talks about emus and cassowary as well, which are other big running birds that'll kill you.
Well, the family is, they're ratites, and so ostriches are African, emus are Australian. There's rhea, R-H-E-A, in South America. For those of you who do crossword puzzles, you know that word. So there, and I guess I also read someplace that they used to be in the Mideast, like maybe Saudi Arabia. Again, they're desert creatures. That kind of ostrich, that member of the family has died out quite a while ago. But and it is interesting because they're kind of like a camel. They're built so funny. They look like they were designed by committee, and they're. Yeah, but they've got these powerful legs and these huge bodies and these big wings, but they flap them, at each other and at people, but they don't.
Yeah, they don't go anywhere with them. What else can you tell us about the brewery that the beer came from? He works near Port Townsend. Levi, can you share more about the brewery?
Sorry, I was muted there.
That's okay.
Yeah. Tom, check them out. They're a great brewery. What's cool about the brewery is they're two friends that they've been brewing beer together for about 17 years. So they're just hanging out in their garage basically for like 17 years, kind of pipe dream brewery. Then had successful careers in other fields. I think Patrick was in forest management and Glenn was a graphic design artist. And so they're both retired and decided to start this brewery in Port Townsend where Patrick is from originally. So they do, kind of your traditional style ambers. They have a porter, a brown. They do some really good IPAs as well. And then the outdoor space is like really cool. It's like kind of in the woods a little bit. You're in like the end of an industrial zone and it's nicely lit, some good heaters out there. It's pretty cool.
A couple people wanted to know about the connection between the book and the beer. So this one is a little bit different in the pairing. We had originally anticipated having this program series in March. And at that time, this spot was going to be for a Reuben's Brews beer called Bits and Bob's IPA. And so I had originally been looking at that one. That one's very like innovative, different, unique, a whole lot. Like they take whatever they've discovered in the past year that they like and kind of put it in. So each year the Bits and Bob's is a little bit different. And so I was kind of relying on that uniqueness when I chose the book. But then we had to shift the program timeline and Levi gave us the Annabelle's Amber instead. And like Peggy said, it just fits the roasted, the toasted flavors. If you read tasting notes for the American Ambers, they all have a lot of toasting, the warmer temperature that it's fermented at, and it has a full, strong or stronger flavor, which I thought worked really well with those strong female main characters that Peggy was talking about. So it's just like fate that this book and this beer should go together.